2014. What an interesting time to be a gamer, what with all the big releases, big disappointments, and plenty of hype trains leaving the station for 2015. With plenty ahead, I feel like taking a look back at the games I played in that eventful year, much as many before me have already done. Just a few rules to keep in mind though. First, in order to make the cut, I have to have at least played the game for the first time in 2014. The release date is null. Second, I don't own any of the current gen consoles. Hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you were expecting Super Smash Bros., you're gonna be a little disappointed here. And finally, while these are my favorite games I played in 2014, I'd love to know what some of your favorites were, if you'd like to leave them in the comments below. But enough of the fluff, let's get this show on the road.
Number 10.
Yes, you're looking at this correctly. When it comes to the seemingly unstoppable indie juggernaut known as Minecraft, it only took me until August of last year for me to buy into the craze, and I don't regret a minute of it. Now, for the sake of fairness, I'm not judging Minecraft's position on this list with mods in mind. I'm only looking at the unmodded version of the game, better known as Vanilla Minecraft. Minecraft presents a simple premise. You exist in a near-endless world made of blocks, and you're free to either build whatever you please with these blocks or play through a survival mode where you must build shelter, gather materials from above and underground, and craft new items to suit your fancy. However, considering that most of the creatures in the land are out for your blood, there's always the constant threat of being attacked by a creeper or skeleton, especially at night and while underground, meaning that you have to be prepared if you're going to stray from your shelter for an extended period of time. You're gonna be doing a lot of mining and crafting, so there's a fitting title you got there, Mo Young, you clever bandicoots. Minecraft can also be played with friends, and it's certainly another interesting prospect, but I've always felt that Minecraft was better as a single-player game. There's just an interesting feeling of loneliness and mystery that gets lost outside of single-player, and this atmospheric gloom is just one of the things I love the most about Minecraft. No matter whether you're eager to mine for diamonds and fight zombies along the way, or just want to build whatever you like, the world of Minecraft is always waiting for you.
Number 9.
Quick show of hands. Who vividly remembers the Commodore 64? Okay, there's at least that one person in the very back there, so I'll continue my awkward segue to number 9 as planned. So let's talk about, VVVVV. A 2D indie platformer made as a love letter to the olden days of the Commodore computers, this game has you playing as Captain Viridian, whose ship has become launched in an alternate dimension with his crewmates scattered about in the new setting. The core gameplay element of 6Vs is that Captain Viridian has the ability to reverse gravity, allowing him to alternate between walking on floors and ceilings, but it can only be activated when standing on a flat surface, opening up the possibilities for a number of puzzles that will test your skill with this one simple ability. And therein lies what VVV is most infamously known for, its difficulty. Put aptly, you will die frequently throughout this game, but with a large number of checkpoints as well as the fair-handed learning curve, it rarely comes off as cheap difficulty, and whenever I found myself at a particularly difficult portion of this game, I wasn't saying, "That's it, 7.8, too much hard," but rather, "One more try, I'll get it this time." Perhaps the cheapest game on this list, this does not mean that V to the 6th power is a bad game. In fact, I'd say to go out and give VVVVV a try if it piques your interest.
Number 8.
Have you ever played a Mega Man game and just thought to yourself, "Yeah, this is great and all, but do you know what it's missing? Animal Girls and Bullet Hell, of course." Enter number 8 on this list, Mega Mari. Mega Mari is a pretty interesting take on the classic Mega Man games, done by Tasogare Frontier, the same company that made the Toho fighting games, and utilizing gameplay elements of both Toho and Mega Man 2. Playing as either Marissa or Alice, you're after Patchouly's 8 familiars so that you can break into her library and steal books at your heart's content. Each stage has unique designs and enemy choices, as you'd expect from a game like this, but Mega Mari brings 2 new concepts to the table. First, there's the use of bullet hell projectile patterns, and while this might have most people being at the thought, you also have the advantage of a small hitbox. hitbox, meaning that most cheap shots are easier to avoid than they appear. And second, whenever you defeat one of Patch Release familiars, you have the choice of giving their weapon to either Marissa or Alice. And this adds an interesting bit of strategy, as most of the weapons are significantly different based on who obtained them. And in a couple of cases, there are weapons for one character that pale in comparison to their counterpart. Megamari also contains several clever nods to the old school Mega Man games, including enemies parodying everything from Mets and Big Eyes to the parody of 8-bit bass lines in many parts of its soundtrack, and weapons that should be strikingly familiar. Anybody that's a fan of the classic Mega Man games and is in the mood for an extra challenge should definitely give Megamari a try. It's a bullet hell of an experience.
Number 7.
Segueing from one difficult game to another, it's time to talk about ETrian Odyssey III: The Drowned City. If you're not familiar with ETrian Odyssey, Persona Q notwithstanding, it's a series of Atlas-made role-playing games that pay homage to the old-school RPGs like Wizardry and The Bard's Tale, using the DS's touchscreen for drawing maps for each dungeon. You're free to craft your party from a multitude of classes, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, and later on you can give party members a subclass that allows them to use skills and weapons from both classes, as well as limit skills that take time to charge, but can easily turn the tide of battle in your favor. All these benefits aside though, don't think for a second that ETrian Odyssey III is the easiest of the bunch. It hardly ever misses an opportunity to break your bravado, knock you to the ground, and kick you right where it hurts the most. While many people would be turned off by the large amounts of grinding needed in order to survive to the next floor or against the next boss, the level cap for this game is lower than most RPGs, and there are several opportunities to increase the amount of experience you gain from battle, though I'll require some degree of patience. Given the limitations of the DS, it's actually quite impressive how the ocean segments and dungeon floors look, though battles are limited to just inanimate sprites. The soundtrack should be blissful to anyone who grew up with a Sega Genesis, but the barrier of difficulty that you need to get over in order to really enjoy this game weighs down on a lot of positives and keeps ETrian Odyssey III from being any higher.
Number 6.
One common complaint regarding JRPGs that I hear from a lot of people is the lack of creativity in their storylines. But Eternal Sonata brings an intriguing premise to the table. Essentially, the entire game takes place in the mind of Romantic-era composer Frédéric Chopin as he lays dreaming on his deathbed. Chopin finds himself to be an inhabitant of this wonderland of his imagination, but soon discovers that as he draws closer to death, the more real his fantasy becomes. This presents a very fascinating contrast repeated in the game. Sure, its art style is fairly cartoonish, and the number of musical tones is copious and occasionally groan-worthy, but on the other end, this game actually deals with some pretty heavy themes, ranging from social alienation, despotism, and suicide to the primary recurring theme of escapism. Concept aside, as an early title for both the Xbox 360 and PS3, Eternal Sonata looks impressive both for its time and even compared to the rest of its console's libraries. And while it starts out with a turn-based combat system, as the game progresses, it begins removing these safeties, quickly bearing similarities to a Tales game. Add in a soundtrack that mixes in many pieces by Chopin with the genius of Motoi Sakuraba, and this is one JRPG that will break many of your expectations.
Number 5.
I'm starting to notice a pattern of indie games on this list. We're getting into good stuff now. Skullgirls could have won a spot this high on the list based on presentation alone, but such reasoning would be petty, so, where'd I put my list of reasons again? Aha! Here it is! Skullgirls is an indie fighting game set in a world similar to post-World War II America, with a plot that involves a MacGuffin that grants wishes for the pure, corrupts the impure, and makes cheap final bosses. Taking on the roles of many characters caught in the conflict, you follow their journey to the Skull Heart, learning more about their motive for doing so in the process. While Skullgirls features a smaller roster than most fighting games, this complements the art style quite well, as the mix of Eastern and Western animation techniques gives each character their own visual flair and makes every frame of animation and background enchantingly detailed. Other positives for this game includes great soundtrack, superb voice acting, the ridiculously massive pile of references to other games, and an in-depth tutorial whose scope nearly rivals that of the BlazBlue series. Being able to choose between maining one character or a team of 2 or 3 characters allows for more unique gameplay scenarios, but this also comprises one of the disadvantages of this game, that being that teams of 3 are a common sight in arcade mode, making repeats a common occurrence. There really aren't many other negatives of note that I feel need to be mentioned. I may not be the best with fighting games, but Skullgirls is definitely one I devote time into.
Number 4.
Fun fact, the next game on this list was a game I got for Christmas back in 2013, but didn't make my previous list because I never gave it a try until a month later. And that delay couldn't have come at a better time. Way back in Squaresoft's golden era on the SNES and PS1, Brave Fencer Musashi was an interesting mold breaker that never really got the attention it deserved. Instead of being a turn-based RPG, Brave Fencer Musashi was a blend between a 3D platformer, an action RPG, food puns that will make you smile and groan throughout, and a story that could have passed for a 90s shonen anime. And it all makes for an enjoyable game. The game follows a pint-sized reincarnation of the brave fencer Miyamoto Musashi, summoned to the land of all-you-can-eat, under attack from the evil Thirst Quencher Empire. It's up to Musashi to gather a bunch of elemental MacGuffins, fight their guardians, and storm Thirst Quencher's flying soda fountain. I swear to you, I am not drunk right now. The gameplay revolves around the use of Musashi's twin swords, Fusion, which is weaker but faster and can absorb extra abilities from enemies, and Lumina, which is slower but also stronger and capable of absorbing the aforementioned elemental MacGuffins for you to use as a method of solving puzzles. While the soundtrack to this game is superb and there isn't a single terrible boss fight, the only things keeping this game from being any higher are the minigames that are often more frustrating than they need to be, and some of the awkward physics that make the platforming a slight trial, at least until you get the double jump ability.
Praise the legendary boat! Number 3.
Fez is equal parts brilliance and oddity. Given how fishy its creator has made himself out to be, it's odd to think that this game doesn't reflect any of that. Fez is perhaps the most unique game on this list gameplay-wise. While the game is in 3D, you can only view it one 2D perspective at a time, changing it by flipping the view 90 degrees. This is fleshed out incredibly well in a variety of puzzles ranging from using the ability to shorten the distance between objects, to turning switches, and even entering secret codes. Styled in a way similar to a Metroidvania platformer, Fez shares the lonesome and gloomy atmosphere that made me love Minecraft, and in Fez's case, it gives you a sense of adventure as you try to discover everything about the strange world you've found yourself in. This game gives you a very natural urge to explore, a feeling I haven't genuinely felt in a game since playing Okami back in 2010. As quickly as this game rose in my favorites, I do have a few quirks with this game. Mainly that the large number of collectibles means that there is a tremendous amount of backtracking involved in fully completing the game, and that some of the puzzles involve traveling very long distances across the game, sometimes with the punishment of repeating the process if you didn't take correct notes. These flaws in its creator's mentality aside, Fez was a game I truly underestimated. I expected a simple platformer with a unique gameplay mechanic, but walked away from an experience that truly ignited a love of indie games within me.
Number 2.
Hypothetical scenario. Let's say you have a blender. And within this blender, you place a strategy RPG like Disgaea, the classic PC game The Oregon Trail, and add a little Norse mythology and culture for good measure before you set it to frappe. What's the end result? The Banner Saga. Considering that strategy RPGs like Disgaea and Fire Emblem Awakening have stayed in my favorite games list for a good while, it came as no surprise that I was going to enjoy the Banner Saga. Set in a world where the sun has stopped moving and humans are accompanied by the half-beast Varl and the monstrous Dredge, the Banner Saga chooses to center its story on various party members with each chapter, and the game flows between camps and villages where you prepare your army before setting out, and the many battles you will fight along the way. The game's hand-drawn graphics are an absolute marvel for the eyes, especially during the travel scenes where you sit back and take in the cold and almost lifeless backdrop, hoping you have enough supplies and morale for your army to survive the trip. Classes are broken up into the ranged classes like Menders and Archers, and physical classes like Wardens and Strongarms, though aside from special skills, many of the classes seem less unique from each other. Combining attack strength with health is an interesting design choice of the combat system, and it really encourages you to be careful with how you manage your units. There are some other quirks I have with the Banner Saga, such as the abrupt sequel tie-in ending and the lack of weight in the story that dialogue choices have other than different immediate reactions. I may sound like a hypocrite tearing into this game despite it being the penultimate choice here, but I've truly been enjoying the Banner Saga, and with a sequel in the works, I know it has the potential to be even greater. Its flaws aside, the Banner Saga is still a very, very good game, and there was only one game that I got more out of.
Number 1.
Don't act like you didn't see this one coming from a mile away. Widely praised as one of the most successful indie games, retro games, and Kickstarter campaigns in the history of the internet, Shovel Knight quickly rose from its humble origins, and while many have already elaborated upon what makes this game so great, that's not gonna stop me from throwing my hat into the ring. What makes Shovel Knight such a great game is its blending of retro elements such as its gameplay, visuals, chiptune soundtrack, numerous references, and biting difficulty, along with more contemporary elements like checkpoints, autosaving, achievements, and parallax backgrounds. The implementation of breakable checkpoints and their adjustable difficulty especially makes this game a great experience for novices and NES veterans alike, but the difficulty hardly ever feels cheap, and the only penalty for dying is losing money that you can easily recover. This really gives it that enthusiastic one more try feeling I mentioned before with VVVVV, and makes it feel so satisfying when you manage to clear a stage. The level designs are splendid in structure and appearance, the personalities of the Order of No Quarter and other characters have that old 8-bit charm to them, and the soundtrack, done collaboratively between Mega Man composer Manami Matsumae and Jake freaking Genius Kaufman, is some of the most head-bop-worthy chiptune to so far grace my ears. Shovel Knight really does deserve all the praise and attention it gets, and it quickly got a spot as both my favorite game of 2014 and one of my favorite games I've played thus far. I'm the Kitsune Hawk, and if you haven't played Shovel Knight, then I must ask, what do you think you're doing? Go get on Steam, buy some Shovel Knight, play your brains out, and enjoy every glorious second of it.